I don't really know, actually. I mean, I already spend more time on YouTube than I probably should, so I usually don't do a video outside of the usual stuff unless it's something that I think is, like, really cool. I mean, plus, fantasy booking in general seems kind of redundant to me. I don't necessarily see a point to it. I mean, mainly it's just a way for people like me to prove that they can book wrestling better than the people who do it for a living. And it is a lot of fun, but when I do a video, most of the time I want it to be about something more than just me having fun. I mean, I do have a lot of ideas, and I guess if I really wanted to, I could do a lot more of these things, but I only really do fantasy booking videos when I have an idea that is so good that I feel like I just have to share it with people. If you haven't been following me very long, there's a playlist on my page for fantasy booking stuff, and also there's one I did for the Knocked Out column, which is archived on the blog right now. It's all about how I would have booked Sarah Stock when TNA signed her last year, and I always thought that one was really, really good. As for when I might do more fantasy booking, I'll do more when I have a good idea. How's that? Well, since you asked... TNA seemed dead set on keeping this character around, but there's no point in limiting a talented wrestler to a pretty silly gimmick that was created for the sole purpose of promoting a failed video game, which I never actually played myself, but I heard was pretty terrible. So I would have just gone ahead with the original plan of having Homicide learn who Suicide really is, unmask him, reveal him to be Kazarian, and then I would have Kazarian abandon the gimmick, but the gimmick wouldn't go away. The Suicide gimmick would stay out there, just like floating in the ether somewhere, available to anyone who ever wanted to pick it up and use it. So anytime the writers wanted to do a mystery opponent storyline, anytime there's some kind of masked assailant, like when Tomko was like attacking AJ backstage wearing a mask last year, anytime a wrestler wants to do something without revealing their identity, they can just put on the Suicide costume. So I would let it be known that Suicide, the person, never actually existed, because he is, after all, a video game character. But Suicide, the gimmick, is always out there and available for anyone to use. That way, Suicide would still have a presence on the show, but at the same time, TNA wouldn't have to lower themselves to the stupidity of pretending that a video game character is a real person. No, they won't. And I don't like saying that, but it's the truth. Love it or hate it, WWE is the #1 company. They've got the most money, they've got the most resources, they're the most firmly ensconced in modern culture, and at this point, their fan loyalty is so intense that a lot of people are probably going to watch their show no matter how bad it is. No one's knocking them off their perch. Before the Attitude Era, it would have been a different story, but now it's just not going to happen. And if any company out there has any ambitions of taking that #1 spot away from WWE, be they TNA, ROH, WWP, whoever, they need to get their head out of their ass. It doesn't matter what Dixie Carter thinks, doesn't matter what Eric Bischoff thinks, doesn't matter what Hulk Hogan thinks. TNA is never going to be #1. That doesn't mean that they can't be a successful and profitable #2, but they need to be satisfied with that. WWE is at the top of the mountain, and unless something really earth-shattering happens to them, they're going to stay there, like it or not. Well, my all-time favorite character is Yoda. Love Yoda. Some other favorites are Darth Maul, Asajj Ventress, Luke Skywalker, of course, C-3PO, R2-D2, and Mara Jade from the books. Least favorite characters? Unsurprisingly, Jar Jar Binks, and also Anakin Skywalker. Not Darth Vader, but Anakin Skywalker. First, I would go back to the scripts and throw them out. Discard everything but the basic story and rewrite everything else. I would try to fill in all the gaping plot holes and continuity gaps between the prequels and the original trilogy, write dialogue that does not sound completely stilted and lifeless, and characters that are not absolute dumbasses. I would completely remove Jar Jar Binks. No more Jar Jar Binks. Just erase him from existence. He no longer exists. I would retool Anakin's character so he's not a whiny, unlikable, emotionally stunted asshole and make him a person I can actually sympathize with. Next, I would recast Anakin and Padme. Jake Lloyd, Hayden Christensen, Natalie Portman, goodbye. And I like Natalie Portman, just not in this role. In their place, I would cast actors who actually have chemistry. Buying into Anakin's fall to the dark side completely hinges on whether or not the actors can sell the love story. If they can't do that, the whole thing falls apart, as George Lucas showed us. And finally, I would get away from the damn green screen, because those movies have got to be like 95% CG, and I swear I was going into sensory overload during these things. My philosophy on that is, if it's cost feasible for you to do it practically on the set, and you can make it look good, then that's how you should do it. And you should only resort to CG when it absolutely cannot be done any other way. So I would make more use of practical sets, practical effects, and rely a little bit less on CG so the end result doesn't look like a damn cartoon. One of the first videos I ever made was Knockouts vs. Divas, where I compared the two divisions, and at the time, the Knockout division was much more impressive. They had better talent, their championship meant more, they got more screen time, they had better matches, and generally the Knockouts were just a lot more relevant and interesting than the Divas were. That's really not the case anymore. These days they're about even, I think. TNA still has better female talent, but they don't use it. Sarita, Hamada, Taylor Wilde, they've essentially become jobbers. 2 years ago, they would have been ruling the Knockout division, and now they're all enhancement talent for the beautiful people, who are stale as hell, nowhere near as talented in the ring, but they're the only Knockouts who get pushed anymore. And that sucks because the beautiful people suck. You can make them heels, you can make them faces, you can reunite Velvet and Angelina. I don't care anymore. They suck. Angelina is pretty decent in the ring. Madison Rayne is okay, but Velvet should just be a manager, and Lacey desperately needs to find a new line of work before she breaks her own neck in that ring. They're good on the mic. That's it. Wrestling-wise, they're the worst women TNA have, and they're the only women who get featured, along with Tara, who got pushed to the moon last year and didn't deliver shit. Once upon a time, TNA pushed the girls who could wrestle and used the beautiful people as cannon fodder, and that's the way it should have stayed. And the Divas aren't any better. The Divas are a joke. Maurice, Alicia Fox, Eve Torres, the Bella Twins, Rosa Mendez, Kelly Kelly, these women suck. They're all horrible. Every single one of them belong in FCW. They spent 6 months doing this Piggy James garbage, humiliating Mickey just because she didn't look anorexic anymore, which was bullshit to begin with because it never affected her work in the ring or stopped her from getting over. She wins the title, but then loses it right back, so there was no payoff for any of it. And then they fired her. She's the most popular woman in the industry, the top diva in the company for years, and she can wrestle. And they fired her. Why? What the hell for? So they can keep shoving McCool down our throats? McCool isn't over! She's never been over! Her and Layla hosted that kissing contest on NXT. The rating for that episode went down the toilet. They've been pushing McCool to the moon for ages, and people fall asleep when she comes out. Christ, she's not even the champion right now, and she's still walking around with a title belt, which, outside of The Undertaker, I don't think anyone wants to see. Then they go and release all these other divas. They cut Katie Lee, who could wrestle, but they hadn't done squat with her for years. And then they cut Serena Deeb. Serena Deeb, who... I mean, it was her dream to be in WWE. And she put herself through OVW on her own money, busted her ass on the independents. She changed her look to what WWE wanted. She got a nose job, a boob job, was the only girl in FCW who was willing to shave her head to get a spot on the main roster, who was one of the best female workers they had, and they fired her. Because she drank a few beers, because she partied a little, because she did what people in their early 20s do, because she's not straight edge in real life, because she wasn't living her gimmick 24 hours a day, they fired her. What kind of horse shit is that? The Divas suck. Plain and simple. And the Knockouts are heading in that direction now too.